any advanced warning because I did this just kind of as a last minute thing. So hopefully I'll get some people to jump in here and hang out with me. We're going to be talking about listed, identified, and approved. So that's the agenda for today. Again, I didn't warn anybody and let them know that I was going to be doing this. So hopefully some people are going to join us. It's a Saturday. It's Labor Day weekend. So for all I know, everybody is in the woods or fishing, and that's probably where I should be. But I had to do an 8-hour class today. Oh, my man Enrique is there. How are you, my friend? Good to see you. Thanks for popping by. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. This was just kind of a last minute thing. I decided to just do a video. I don't know. Derek, see and hear you perfectly. Outstanding. Thank you so much for the input. Love it. So we're getting some people popping in. Dave DeLima in the house. Look at this hot stud, so dapper. You're digging the pink shirt. I know, right? I just got done teaching an 8-hour class today, and I hadn't changed out of it yet. So, oh, I know. Chuck is saying, "What? It's not a purple shirt." I know. I'm I'm usually into purple shirts. I definitely purple is definitely my favorite dress shirt to wear. But purple and pink, believe it or not, are my two favorites. Like black is my favorite color and red, but as far as like dressing up, purple and pink, definitely. So, Nate, good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much for stopping by. It's so good having everybody here. Like I mentioned, I didn't give any warning. I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to hop on and see if anybody pops in. And I think that I get the Facebook comments on my business page, yes. But if you're watching on my personal page, and if you're not, you should be, but if you're watching on my personal page, I don't get the messages through the software here. So I think I just get it on my business page. But it looks like we're seeing some people pop in. So maybe like 10 minutes and we'll actually get started. Again, this was just kind of a last minute thing. Decided to just do a video. In fact, you know what it was? And those of you who know me well or following me on Facebook will believe this. I was arguing with somebody on Facebook. Imagine that. And it was like two people, it's 2 against 1, like 2 people against me, which isn't even fair. I mean, they should have called another 50 people. But yeah, they were arguing, saying how everything has to be listed, and Ryan, you're a moron, and it has to be not only listed, but UL listed. And I'm like, I need to do a video one of these days about this because it's so wrong. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to do it right now. I know, Lloyd, right? Nobody has ever even heard of me arguing with somebody on Facebook. Look, what I mean is, like, in a parallel universe, there is a face Twittergram page where some people argue code, and I'm one of them. So, Martin Jack, good to see you, brother. I think you're in Mississippi, if I'm not mistaken. So, good to see you from down there in Mississippi. Thanks for all you do, Ryan. We'll look for the recording when it's wrapped up. Oh, thanks, man. Still going at it, awaiting the first beer. You're still working. You're on Eastern time. So, Saturday in Boston at 7 p.m. Man, that's rough. James, LOL. Lloyd has a question. Bring it. I love questions. Type the question up, man. That is totally what we're here for. Jorge, you're so welcome. If you like the videos, I'm honored. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. So, yeah, cool. Lloyd, if you have a question, yeah, I think YouTube, you're on it. It limits to like 185 characters or something. So, for me, as big a spaz as I am, I have a hard time limiting my questions to 185. But, yeah, bring it on. James, you're working too. Man, you guys are out there killing it on a Labor Day weekend Saturday. Ray says, I'm the man. Appreciate. Oh, thank you. And greetings from Raleigh, North Carolina. Awesome. I've been to Raleigh, North Carolina, Tyler. Nice place. One of the first places I ever flew into. Do interlocks have to be listed? Holy cow. Okay, so no flies on Lloyd. I knew Lloyd, if Lloyd asks a question, it's going to be a good question. Virginia Beach, thank you, Robert. Do interlocks have to be listed? So I'm thinking that we're talking about, yes, Chad, it will be available later. I'm thinking with the interlocks, Lloyd, you're talking about like the breaker interlocks for transfer equipment. And my answer to that in 2017 and previous versions was no. My answer to that in the 2020 version is yes. And I think it's 702.7 in the new code book. No, it's not. Okay, well, swing and a miss on that. 702.5. Because from what I gather, and that's a great question, what I gather is a mechanical interlock. Yeah, good. A mechanical interlock is considered transfer equipment. It's not necessarily a transfer switch, but it's transfer equipment. So it has to be listed. And that's the new rule in the 2020 code. What's interesting about that is they do make listed varieties of it. And they're actually, from what I can see, they're listed as a circuit breaker hardware or circuit breaker accessory is how they're listed. So yes, they do need to be listed in the 2020 code due to 702.5 A, I think. Let's see here. Is it A? Let's see. I better read this actually. Okay, subsection D. 702.5 D as in Delta. Transfer equipment, which an interlock is, must be suitable for the intended use and shall be listed, designed, and installed so as to prevent the inadvertent interconnection of all sources of supply in any operation of the transfer equipment. So yes, Lloyd, I would tell you that it does have to be listed, although the product standard by which it is listed is as a circuit breaker accessory. So there you go. Not required in the 2017 though. We got another Enrique. Man, you Enriques are coming out of the woodwork. I am fantastic, my friend. I hope you are as well. So, yeah. So good to see everybody popping in. It looks like we have 26 people, which, for no warning whatsoever is pretty good. Yes, Lloyd, that is a 2020 change. In 2017, I don't think it was required. There's nothing that I know of that requires circuit breaker accessories to be listed. That would include things like handle ties and the little interlock switch. So nothing that I know of in 2017 requires any circuit breaker accessories to be listed. In the 2020 code, circuit breaker accessories as a whole do not need to be listed, but transfer equipment does. And because you're using the interlock as transfer equipment, 702.5D requires it to be listed. Yeah. All right, let's give it just maybe 2 more minutes, see if anybody else pops by. I had a great day teaching today here in Salt Lake. I did 4 hours on general requirements and then 4 hours on NFPA 70E, the standard for electrical safety in the workplace. So I just got done talking for 8 straight hours, but that's what I do is talk. So I thought, I'm just going to keep on talking. I'm like Forrest Gump. He runs and then just keeps on running. I'm going to talk and keep on talking. Today was my 9th day teaching out of the last 11 days. There were 2 days that I weren't teaching, that I wasn't teaching. One day was when I was flying home from South New Jersey back to Salt Lake. And then yesterday, I actually just had the day off. So aside from that, though, man, it's been a lot of teaching for me. The flight from the trip to New Jersey was great. Flew into Newark, did 2 days in North Jersey, East Brunswick, then 2 days in South Jersey, in somewhere, and then I was gonna go to the airport in the morning and fly home like Sunday morning. So I got all dressed up and everything. I'm ready to go. I checked out, did the Uber app, checked my phone, and I had a message from Delta saying that my flight was rescheduled. So it was bounced back like 2-3 hours. So I'm like, okay, fine. So I reschedule it, tell the hotel that I'm actually going to be here for a couple more hours, so don't check me out. And they were great. And then I got another text like 2 hours later saying, forget it, your flight is canceled. It's not going to leave until like 9:00 p.m. Eastern, which put me home in Salt Lake City, Utah at 1:30 in the morning, and I taught my next class 5 hours later. So fantastic trip, but the trip home was pretty rough. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and talk about tonight's class. We're going to talk about the differences between listed, identified, and approved. And I'm curious if you guys want to play along with me. I've never done this on a live stream, but I've been using this program called Menti.com. And now that I think about it, this is probably a mistake because you're probably watching on your phone, which means you can't go to this website on your phone. Just realize that. So that's a bad idea for a live stream. I was going to say, if you want to go to that site and enter that little code, you can do a just like a little 3-question quiz, just so I kind of have a feel for where you guys are. Chad says, you talk about us working. I know, right? Yeah, I'm off working, but here I am, working for fun. And I still need to do a course in DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth. I think I'm going to be doing that. Derek, send me like a whatever you call it, a message, personal message, direct message. I'm going to be doing some online stuff that's for like the Dallas area, the DFW area. So let me know, and I think I might be able to get you straightened out on that. So just realizing that doing the Menti.com thing is probably a mistake, because like I said, you guys are probably on your phone watching the video, so you won't be able to go here and answer these questions. So, it's a live thing, so you get weird things when you go live. So let's go ahead and get rolling. Joe Ballard, how you doing, my friend? Good to see you. All right, Article 100, listed. Let's take a look here. I'm going to do it like this. This is the definition in Article 100. It's equipment or materials that are included in a list that is published by an organization concerned with product evaluation. Okay, that's all it is. Like when a listed product means that the product is included in a list. That's what it means. Now, how do you get your product included in a list? Well, if I'm a manufacturer, let's say I manufacture 480 volt or 240 volt generators, stationary generators. I would take this product and I would send it off to a testing body, a certifying body, and that could be UL, that could be Intertek, that could be FM approvals, that could be TUV. There's all sorts of different testing laboratories. But what I would do is I would send my generator to them and I would say, hey, test this generator, and if it complies, then I would like to have my product listed. Now, they can only test the generator if there is a product standard. Okay, so you send your generator off to them and you say, hey, test this. They're going to look and say, well, what test do you want me to do? And it just so happens for stationary generators that there is a product standard that includes all the required tests, and that's called the UL 2200. So they're going to do the tests prescribed in the UL 2200, and if you meet all of the requirements, then you will get your product listed. And that means we include you on our list of certified products. Now, one very common list would be UL's Product IQ. So you go to UL's website, and they have a portion of their website called Product IQ, and you can look for the specific product. So here I'm looking for a particular product from Rayco. It looks like this is just a random thing that I brought up. So I want to find out, hey, is this box a listed box, or is this clamp, or whatever it is? So I can look it up on UL's website, and yes, it is a listed product. There is the model numbers. It is listed, so that is our list. UL Product IQ is a list. There are other lists, like I said, from Intertek and from other testing labs, but that is the list. Now, if I'm in the field, that doesn't do me a lot of good, right? Because I may or may not have access to a list, but I can usually take a look at the product and see if it's listed by checking for a label. So there's an informational note. It says ways of indicating that a product is listed might vary, and some testing laboratories do not consider a product listed if it's not also labeled. Okay, cool. So here is a product. Here is a mark that's indicating that the product is listed. Again, I would have to go back and look at the actual list to verify that. But this little mark that we have here is what we would call a label. And labeled is also defined in Article 100, and that is equipment or materials that have a label or a symbol or a similar mark of a product testing and evaluation company indicating compliance with appropriate product standards. Okay, so here I have a box full of twist-on wire connectors. And of course we can see that it is listed by UL, and most of us are familiar with that. And it is also listed by CSA, by the Canadian Standards Association. And it's listed as a wire connector, and it complies with Product Standard 774A for UL standards. For CSA standards, the Canadian stuff, it is LR 9706. This mark over here on the right, CE, means nothing to us. All right, this is for the European Union, and as far as us in the United States is concerned, or North America, this mark means nothing. It's fine if I was a manufacturer. I would probably want my product suitable for use everywhere in the world, so I would have that mark. But for us in the United States, that mark doesn't mean anything. In the 2020 code, they added a note that says for small parts or parts with unusual shapes or surfaces, the label is often found on the box that the product is packaged in. Okay, cool. So here I've got a box of trade size 1 EMT compression connectors. If I take my individual pressure connector and I'm looking for a label on it, a listing mark, you're not going to find one, because they're not going to mark every single connector. That would be, way too much work and for no reason. So instead, they will mark the box, and that's what the note says. For small parts or parts with unusual shapes or surfaces, we will put the label on the box that the product is packaged in. And if you go to UL Product IQ and Intertek's version of that, you'll find some specific information about the mark. It will actually tell you, we don't mark the individual fitting, we mark it in the smallest possible package that the product ships in, or something like that. So with the concerns of counterfeiting and everything, all I's are dotted, all T's are crossed, so they want you to know exactly how these products are marked. Okay, so a question that often comes up is, the NEC requires all equipment to be listed. All right, so we have 60% of you saying that is false. We have 40% of you saying true. Good stuff. This was the whole purpose of why I wanted to do this video, was this very question. The answer is false. The NEC does not require all products to be listed. It requires some products to be listed, no doubt about that, but it doesn't require all products to be listed. Let's take a look into the code book here. We go to 90.7. This is the first section people bring up when they start talking about listing. Some, but not all equipment, and that's my words there, it's not verbatim out of the code. Some equipment is required to be listed by a qualified testing laboratory with the proper equipment to test and inspect them. All right, so this piece of equipment, whatever it might be, I think it's a Luminaire, is a listed product. We can tell that by evidence of its label. So this is a labeled product, which means it's listed. Let's go over this mark here. This is Intertek ETL, which, by the way, stands for Edison Testing Laboratories. These guys have been around since, Thomas Edison. Listed for use in Canada, listed for use in the United States. That's what the C and the US marks are. Similar mark to UL's mark and CSA's mark. So some things have to be listed, but not everything has to be listed. The use of listed products removes the inconsistency of products being inspected by hundreds of different inspectors all around the country. If I have listed equipment, it just makes my life as an inspector significantly easier. I can look at the product and I know that somebody else has looked at it and determined that it's safe. And that takes a big burden off of me. Now, what exactly is it listed for is something that we want to know. So this is a listed product by UL and CSA. More specifically, it's listed as grounding equipment. Beautiful. So now, when I have 100 different inspectors, I can get them all together. We can look at this device, and we can all agree what it is and what it's for, because it's listed as grounding equipment. If it wasn't listed, we might get 100 different answers. We might look at this, maybe it's a terminal bar. We might get some people that would say, well, that's a terminal bar, but it's only for use for neutral conductors, or it's only for limited energy circuits, or it's for grounding and bonding. With a listed product, we can all agree on what it's for. Now, for listed equipment, the factory installed wiring and the construction of equipment does not need to be inspected, except to check for alterations or damage. All right, so here I have this listed piece of equipment. I don't need to get out my magnifying glass and try to figure out what kind of conductor insulation, is that THHN or XHHW, and what size, and is it marked? I don't need to do that. For listed equipment, the factory installed wiring and the overall construction does not need to be inspected, except to check for alterations or damage. Now, if you've altered it or you've damaged it, well, then that might be a problem. Certainly if you've damaged it, then we're going to have a problem. What if you alter a listed piece of equipment? Is that something that you can do? Well, you can alter equipment to a certain extent. You can alter equipment in the way that the manufacturer intended you to alter it. When I buy a cabinet, right, that I mount a panel board inside of, I don't like to have cabinets that have the pre-punched knockouts. I like to drill or punch my own. Well, that's altering equipment, but it's altering it in a way that the manufacturer intended, so that's okay. But what if the manufacturer really doesn't address any alterations and you address it and you alter it? Does that mean you can't use it? Does that mean you void the listing? Well, not necessarily. If you contact a product testing laboratory, what they will say is, look, once you alter a listed product, then we, the testing lab, we can no longer certify that it will perform in the same way that it did when we tested it. We're not saying that you can, we're not saying you can't, we're just saying, look, if you alter it, we can no longer say it will do what we said it will do. So there you go. It then falls down onto the AHJ to determine whether or not that alteration is going to negatively impact the safety or the performance of the product. Certainly we can't alter equipment to make it behave in a way that it was never intended, So yes, we can alter products, but to a very limited extent. We have to be careful how we do it. I'm going to check the chat board here and see how we're doing. Oh, wow, we're getting some comments here. How do I slide? Oh, let's see. Let me bring this up so I can read it. I'm going to slide. There we go. Okay. Hello, Joe. Will Smith from Chicago. My man. Chad Toms, admit it, Menti paid you for that shout out. I wish, man. Troy Chris, this is great. Thank you. Andre Bedell. Okay, now this is what I'm talking about. Do gutters have to be listed with a voltage source, etc., if it's mounted directly beneath or above a panel that's already labeled? Okay, interesting. So I think we're doing some different terms here, but here's what I would say. No, gutters or wireways, they don't need to be marked with what conductors and what voltage systems they have in them. No, they do not. And in fact, interestingly, gutters and wireways do not have to be listed products. If you go to 366.6 and 376.6, that's where you would normally see a listing requirement, and you'll notice there is not a listing requirement for gutters or for wireways. Chad, this is awesome. Thank you very much. Chad wants to add, other Chad, would one of the other listing agencies use the UL 2200? Yes. So you have UL, and they test and certify equipment, but they also write product standards. So if I send my generator to, or let's say a circuit breaker, I send a circuit breaker to Intertek, and I say, hey, test this circuit breaker and list it if it complies. Well, what test do they have to certify that it complies to? They're going to check it against the product standard UL 489. So Intertek, from my knowledge, and I love Intertek, they're great, I've taught for them, they're wonderful people. I don't think that they write standards, at least not for use in the United States. That's usually UL. So UL writes the standards, and they also do the testing, but so do other testing laboratories as well. Tom Garbo, everybody still calls them wire nuts. I know. I'm a code guy. I got to be careful. I call twist-on wire connectors twist-on wire connectors. Kevshawn Jackson watching. Awesome. I think you're in New York, Kevshawn. So very interesting. Derek. Yep, yeah, Kevshawn from New York City. Nice. Good stuff, guys. Thanks so much for popping by. All right, let's get back to it. 90.7 added this language in the 2017 code. It says, for listed equipment, the suitability of the product must be determined by application of requirements that are compatible with the code. Okay, so the fact that the product is listed doesn't necessarily mean that you can use it. If I have a listed product, it's supposed to comply with the NEC. That's what this section says, and this is relatively new. But I'll give you an example. This guy right here especially, this guy here that you can thread into your lamp holder and then put an attachment plug into and a cord, absolutely not allowed. If I go to section 410.90 in the NEC, it says lamp holders are only for holding lamps. They're not for adapters and different things. So that is 100% not an allowable piece of equipment. It could be listed though, and if it's listed, well, it's listed, but guess what? You still can't use it because it doesn't comply with the code, even if it's listed. Ooh, let's see here. Does the code ever require products to be UL listed? Let's see how you guys did on this one. Let's see, is this going to work? This is my bad decision to do this live. Oh, you know what? I see what I did here. I didn't set it to let you guys answer at your own pace. So that's why nobody answered. All right. If you're out there, go to menti.com. Hit those numbers, 827020. Might be too late for this one. Does the code ever require products to be UL listed? All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just do a spoiler alert because I was too late. I screwed up the setup here. The answer is no. The code never, ever requires products to be UL listed, and it can't. It would violate federal antitrust law if it did. You couldn't adopt the code and enforce it as a legal standard. The law can't tell you to buy square D breakers, right? What if we had a rule in the code that said you must use square D breakers? Well, that's nonsense. Eaton, Siemens, there's lots of good manufacturers, and they would rightfully, throw a fit and say, look, that's nonsense. You can't have that as a law. Same thing with UL. UL is one testing laboratory. We can use UL, but it's certainly not required that we use UL. So, yeah, we can use one of all sorts of different testing laboratories like this one here. This is Intertek. Nothing wrong with Intertek. Now, 110.3b says if you have listed equipment. Doesn't say you have to have listed equipment. It says if you do have it. If your equipment is listed or labeled or both. It has to be installed and used in accordance with any listing or manufacturer's instructions. And the reason for that is when I send my product off to a testing lab, I also have to send my instructions to them. And you might have the best, safest, appropriate piece of equipment in the world. But if your instructions tell me to use it in a way that's going to make it unsafe, your product doesn't get listed. So if it's listed, that means a third party, a certified, a qualified party, has looked at the instructions and read them and knows that they're good. Do I have to follow instructions on equipment that's not listed? No. No, not according to the NEC. We only have to follow instructions for listed equipment. So here, among the obvious requirements for this product, it says don't immerse it in water. Well, yeah, definitely don't want to do that. But I'm sure there's other instructions as well, and it's saying read them before using them. Here's another example. This is a listed piece of equipment, and we have to follow the instructions. It says strip conductor insulation and wire brush the conductor. How many of you guys have a wire brush in your truck? This says wire brush the conductor. And if your connection is suitable for aluminum conductors, apply some antioxidant compound on the conductor, then put the wire in there, tighten the connector hardware to the appropriate torque, and there you go. But do I need to wire brush the conductor? Yeah. This is a listed product, and your instructions are saying to wire brush the conductor. This can get interesting. What about panel boards? Over here on the left. Here I have a Square D panel board label. And if I was Square D, I would write the exact same thing here. I would say, listen, on my Square D panel board, use only Square D Homeline breakers. Yeah, of course. I'm not going to tell you to use somebody else's breakers. So when Square D sent this to get listed, they probably sent their panel board and a box full of Square D Homeline breakers. And they sent them off to their testing laboratory, and the testing laboratory, put current on them and did all the tests, and they said, yep, as you sent it to us, this is good. Your panel board is listed for use with these circuit breakers. Then you have another manufacturer, in this case Eaton, who comes along and says, I think my breakers would work just fine in their panel board. So I'm going to send our testing lab a Square D panel board and a box full of our breakers. And they're going to go ahead and test them, and if they perform safely, then they're going to list the circuit breaker, and then more specifically, they're going to classify the circuit breaker. And the classified breaker is kind of an interesting one. Now, if you think about it, UL, Intertek, FM Labs, TUV, these guys don't care about what brand you have. They're not going to protect Square D's brand or Eaton's brand. They're simply looking at the equipment and figuring out whether or not it's safe. So I send these breakers along with a Siemens panel board and a Murray panel board, ITE, GE, Square D, Kraus-Heinz, Thomas & Betts. I send all of these panels and all of these breakers together, and I said, look, man, if these are safe, will you list them? And they did. So these are listed, but they're actually classified. And what that means is a classified breaker acts as an amendment to the instructions of the panel board. So this circuit breaker is listed, and it's classified for use in a Square D panel. Does that mean I can use it in a Square D panel? Yes, that's exactly what that means. So you do need to follow instructions, but classified equipment can kind of act as an amendment to those instructions. 110.3c was added in the 2017 code. It says listing must be performed by a qualified testing laboratory, and the testing must be based on a recognized product standard in order to ensure safety. Kind of surprising that it didn't say that until 2017. I mean, you could argue that like any piece of paper with names of manufacturer was a list, like Oprah Winfrey's favorite electrical equipment. If she writes down your name on the list, does that mean your product is listed? Well, I guess in 2014 maybe it did. In 2017 it's saying no. Listing has to be done by a qualified testing laboratory, and the test has to be based on an actual product standard. And that's why some equipment doesn't have to be listed. Not every piece of equipment actually has a product standard. Like if you think about energy storage systems, big lithium-ion batteries in a person's house, that should be a listed product. There's a lot of parts involved here. We want listed products. But there wasn't a product standard until 2020. So there wasn't a requirement for energy storage systems to be listed until the 2020 NEC, because they couldn't be listed until 2020 because there wasn't a product standard. So sometimes we create equipment and it's out there and running and being sold and installed before there's even a product standard. That does happen. There's also an informational note here that says OSHA's NRDL program, Nationally Recognized Testing Laboratory Program, recognizes qualified testing laboratories. And the reason I have here this is just to show that it's not just UL. Yeah, there's UL, there's Intertek, CSA, Met Labs, TUV, ARL, FM. I mean, there's seriously dozens of different qualified testing laboratories. But we want to make sure we're actually using them. What you can't do is just like write UL listed on your tuna fish can here and call it a day, and the least they could have done is circled it, but yeah, that's not allowed. All right, let me open up the chat here. And yeah, so, okay, good. We are getting all sorts of feedback here. Bring this back up. Oh, that was a mistake. Let's see here. That was an even bigger mistake. Bring that up. Oh, I don't know why I can't figure this out. Oh, because I'm doing that instead of that. Okay, much better. Okay, getting the comments here. Thank you. Another shout out. Earth Electric, hey Ryan, how can we be informed in advance that I'm doing these? Yeah, the only way is if I know in advance. So this was totally just like me. I got home from work and I said, you know what? I'm going to live stream. So, sorry I didn't have advance notice either. Derek, yeah, you hear it all the time, man. Oh, it's got to be UL listed, got to be UL listed. Nonsense. What are some examples of alterations that are acceptable to the AHJ? Well, you gave a great example. Drilling holes in a conduit for drainage. Great example. So conduit bodies in wet locations have to be listed. Dry locations, they don't. But in wet locations, they do. And yeah, you can drill the bottom of a conduit body to allow for drainage. We've been doing that for decades, and it's perfectly fine. In fact, in the 2014, maybe 2017, they added language in 314.15 that tells us go ahead and drill a hole in the bottom of your conduit body. It's fine. But that's a great example of altering a listed product in a way that is permitted by the code and should be permitted by the AHJ. So yeah. Greg, my kind of Saturday night. Me too, brother. Thanks. Mismatch breakers always come up in home inspection reports. Absolutely correct. When is mismatched overcurrent devices allowed? When the breaker is classified for use in the panel board. You were taught to only use the same brush for aluminum conductors to clean before applying no-locks. So usually when we see instructions that tell you to wire brush a conductor, it's because it's aluminum and you're going to be putting antioxidant compound. But yeah, that one that I showed, it just says wire brush the conductor. So we have to be careful. Asahi, I think. Thanks for my time. You're welcome. You would highly appreciate it if you'd let us know in advance. I know, I'm so sorry. This is just, I wanted to just live stream and just do it. So, Lloyd, I hope it's been around longer than that. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Lots of agencies that are approved for testing. Why is UL so recognized and others not so recognized? I think just... they took off. I mean, UL, probably because they write the standards. They write the standards and they really took off in the United States. Outside of the United States, I think TUV is the biggest in the world. And second to TUV is actually Intertek. I think Intertek is the second biggest testing lab in the world, I believe. And then, of course, in America, it's UL, and in Canada, it's CSA. Why is it okay to drill the bottom of a conduit? Why not? As long as it's like a 1/4-inch hole and it's just for draining, it's not a problem. Lloyd, you've been drilling LBs since Cheers was a thing. Nice. Good reference there. Love it. All right. Let's head back to it. Some things have to be listed. So let's just go through a couple of examples. Receptacles. Receptacles have to be listed. You're not allowed to use a receptacle that's not listed. So if I go to like 406.3, for example, it says, listen, receptacles have to be listed. They have to be marked with their ampere and voltage ratings and the manufacturer's name, and they're not allowed to be reconditioned. Okay, cool. So there's my manufacturer, my current, my voltage. Beautiful thing. Receptacles have to be listed. So do luminaires. If I go to 410.6, luminaires, lamp holders, and retrofit kits must be listed. So these luminaires here, these need to be a listed product. I think that's been the case since 2008 was when they put that in. It could have been 2011. These have to be listed as a unit, though. So it's not enough to have listed conduit, a listed cord going through it, a listed refractor, a listed lamp holder. It has to be listed as a unit. Now, you could maybe ask the authority having jurisdiction to waive the requirement, because you provided an alternative method with equivalent safety. You could say, look, man, these aren't listed as a unit, and I know they're supposed to be, but will you accept these considering that all of the individual parts are listed? Maybe your inspector will, maybe they won't. Here we have a retrofit kit. So this retrofit kit, and you'd have to squint to see it, and I do apologize. It has a UL mark for use in Canada and US, and it says classified. So this is not listed, and the reason it's not listed is because it's a retrofit kit. If you're retrofitting a luminaire, when we list a product, that means you send the product to a testing lab and they're able to test that exact product and send it out. Well, if I'm retrofitting a different light, I can't very well test the light that I'm retrofitting because this is designed to retrofit all sorts of different luminaires. So this is classified, which means essentially that it contains instructions, and if you follow them, you will result in an installation that would probably satisfy the listing requirements for a new luminaire. We can't really list it and the luminaire as one because you can't. So this is classified, but when it comes to retrofit kits, that's probably good enough for pretty much everybody.